There we go. Sorry, people.
Well, we're glad to see you because we were beginning to wonder.
You know, Jan, we've made a lot of people wonder over the years.
Okay, well, no problem.
It's gotten worse since I've joined. We had a little bit of pilot error here. So we're about 6 minutes late, but we're going to correct it. So,
Okay.
welcome. CTE webinar. Angela, why don't you introduce yourself? We'll kind of introduce the three of you that are on with us right now.
Okay, you want me to start? Okay, so I'm Angela Glasscock, and I teach business at Fairfield Schools and other things. Lots of stuff. I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay, great. Katie, did you step away or turn your camera off?
She was having class and getting ready to start, I think, another group doing something, so she may be in and out.
Okay. I'll tell you what, then we won't worry about getting in. Since there's just the three of us, and move forward. I want to start with, we were at the CTE conference this week. Max, I'll start with you. What became clear to you about CTE at the CTE conference this year?
You know, and I might need to ask the people that were more out in the field, but what I noticed right away is that when I walked in for the lunch especially, I witnessed a lot more administrators and a lot more counselors at the conference this year. So we've had a change in demographics. I think the Kansas CAN plan is changing that. So I just think that CTE is going to be pushed to the front as a part of our new Kansas CAN plan.
So you think the new vision by the State Board of Education is having a real impact on CTE?
I do. And I think visited with a lot of people about, they're asking about how do you add pathways, and there's a lot of people that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and they're the basic ones, and they want to know how to add more and get more of this type of programming in for their students, so the students can create their future.
You know, Max, you and I were at the booth all day, and we had people coming up and talking to us all day. It seemed to me that there were more principals and counselors asking basic kinds of questions. That CTE's kind of been something they did on the side,
right? And
it's moving to the main course, isn't it? It's moving from a side dish to the main course. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I believe that what they're seeing in this is going to be a way to create an individual plan of study for their students, so they can meet one of the pieces of that Kansas CAN plan.
Yeah.
So I believe there's going to be more and more activity in the CTE part of this.
Okay. Leila, you went to more presentations. We were at the booth. You went to more presentations. What became clear to you about CTE today?
Well,
or this week?
I would say several things came clear to me. Number one, districts are looking for not just packaging CTE the way it's always been, but looking for actual hands-on technical skill trainings. Because I fielded a lot of questions about what's coming in the state that we could get our hands on, like the hands-on anatomy or things like that. But for all these different pathways and not just health science.
Integrating CTE into the core
right,
what we call the core.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with that.
You know, we're having a session here at STAC next week that our superintendents called together. And one of the primary discussions was, or topics that they want to talk about this coming week is, how do we monitor the standards that each individual student is mastering, cluster those together and give credit? For example, how do you give an English credit when the student is reading, writing, speaking, listening, demonstrating those competencies in their CTE classes? So that's kind of what you're talking about. We're seeing a different approach to what we've been doing in schools. Is that a fair statement?
Right. And there's been a lot. I mean, I had a lot. Of course, maybe it's because I helped work with Jay and everything to get that simultaneous blended course thing. But I had a lot of questions going. I think I'm starting to get what you were trying to say. how do we make that happen at our school?
Yeah. Cleela, is it fair to say that you've done the crosswalk on several simultaneous blended courses, but there's really no limit to how we can blend those courses if they make sense, is there?
No, there's a
lot of options that we can still continue down that path and need to. Clearly, you also attended the new directors. What was the name of that meeting?
New CTE coordinators.
New CTE coordinators meeting. What major topic that was discussed in there?
Well, they talked about what a successful high school graduate means.
Can you summarize what that discussion, how it went?
Well, I mean, they talked about they basically had it divided. There was a KSD update that talked about like what a successful high school graduate was, about the vision for Kansas, how Kansas is going to lead the world in the success of every student, and that there was 5 state level outcomes that's going to drive their vision: high school graduation rate, post-secondary completion, kindergarten readiness, individual plan of study focused on career interest, and social emotional growth measured locally. And then they also talked about the keys to quality CTE in Kansas.
Hang on, I'm hold that thought, back up just a little bit. The graduation rates we're constantly looking at, CTE is really going to impact that, isn't it? When we start focusing on other than just preparing kids for universities. Okay? Is that a fair statement?
Well, yeah, and I think, I've had some conversations recently with students, and the conversation has gone from, well, I just need this for credit for graduation, which was 2-3 years ago, to, oh, this is really cool stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being, well, I just got to do this to check it off if you get
another hoop.
Yeah.
Okay. Post-secondary success. For my entire career, we focused on preparing kids to go to universities. But now, 2-year degrees, terminal degrees, those 2-year programs where you end up with job skills to go get a job.
Right.
Major improvement there.
And if you're talking 4-year degree, you're talking 4-year degree for a purpose, because if there's something, not just, how do I say, more of a traditional college degree, but that there's actually, if you get a 4-year engineering degree, that there's certain real world applications during that 4-year degree.
But we've also elevated the importance of just industry certifications.
Oh my, yes.
Apprenticeships.
Yes.
Military service. Well, I had a discussion, I should have brought the card in, at CTE with the National Guard folks were there.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, a student that doesn't look into that is missing an opportunity to further their education, aren't they? That military is a real option. I had a really good question and it slipped my mind. What else did you talk about?
Well, I was going to say, we talked about the keys to quality CTE in Kansas, which...
what are those keys to quality?
Number 1, increase the access for all students to high quality career pathways aligned with their respective career interests. Number 2, align all high demand, high skilled career pathways with a credential that has labor market value. Not just that you have something to put on the paperwork, but that really has market
value. When you
value.
get it, it matters.
You got it. Number 3, increase the volume and authenticity of work-based learning experiences, such as job shadowing and internships. So, and then they also talked about the new CTE student categories beginning in 2016, 2017 for our data. A participant is now going to be 0.5 CTE credit. A concentrator will be 2 CTE credits, and it can be any combination of 2 levels in the same pathway. Okay. Completer will still be 3 CTE credits, with a minimum of 2 credits. Must be a combination of technical and application level courses in the same pathway, plus earning a certification aligned with the pathway or a passing score on a third-party pathway assessment.
Okay, hang
If
on.
one exists.
3 credits. That's not 3 half credits. That's not 3 semester classes. It's
3
3
credits.
full year credits.
That's correct.
Okay.
And these are all in high school. They're all at secondary level.
Right.
But they're full credits. They're not semester credits.
That's right.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Right.
Okay.
It's not 3 classes, it's 3 credits. And then there's a fourth category that's a Kansas CTE scholar. And that'll be the first state level CTE student recognition program, and that's going to be coming in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
They can give us much more details. And
If I remember
there's 2 of these categories that they have to report for Perkins federal accountability. The others are internal state categories.
Yeah.
They have to report participants and they have to report concentrators, which is the 0.5 and the 2.0 credit. But that third one and the Kansas Scholar, CTE Scholar, that's a Kansas only thing. And then they also talked about the Kansas Pathway Assessment and Certification, was KPAC. And so that's going to, and talked a little bit about the incentive program and that kind of thing. But this certification thing is going to be a big thing. And one thing I brought up in the conversation, and I'm going to do my best to help ESDAC make this happen, and that is the idea of helping schools to know what the certification on the inside looks like. Like if you're doing an Autodesk basic certification, what does that certification actually look like on the inside? Or, what does the AWS welding certificate, what kind of technical skills does that student have to demonstrate to get that level 1 certificate? And I think we've got post-secondary partners that can help us, or industry partners that can help us, or certifying agencies that can help us make that happen. Because up to this point, it's been more like a cattle chute. You go in, but you don't know what you're putting the kid into.
Related to that, Wednesday when I came off the golf course, don't want you guys to feel bad, when it was 71 degrees, I had a conversation with Blake Flanders, and Blake is the CEO of the Board of Regents.
That's correct.
And he made a really good point that I think has always been there, but it's a shift in emphasis. He said the path to a 4-year degree may be the thing that changes. And he said, now, we kind of in the past have said, if you're going to go to a university, get a 4-year degree, you need to go straight there. Now the mentality is becoming more, get a welding certificate, go on and get an associate degree, then get a bachelor's degree in business administration. It's a different path to a 4-year degree, not immediately leave your high school and go to a university. That makes sense to you guys?
It does. I was working out with regional pathway meetings and was at Hillsborough High School. Walked in and took a look at the bulletin board by the counselor's office. And there's been a huge shift on where we're sending students at Hillsborough anyway. What I saw is we were always good to send 25 to 40% of our kids to Taylor College.
Yeah, it's right there in the city.
Yeah, and this year I saw 3 kids that were actually accepted there. I saw a major shift to Butler, Flint Hills, and WATC. I mean, I'm talking like 15 students. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but at Hillsborough, there's only 26 students going to graduate this year. So
Yeah.
half of the graduating class is looking at a 2-year certificate or degree.
And even though they're going to, several are going to a technical college, it doesn't exclude working towards a bachelor's degree eventually.
Right.
But it's a bachelor's degree for a purpose.
Yeah.
And not just getting a bachelor's degree.
Well, and Cleela, I think that's a good point because I can tell you, and I'm way older than you guys, that when I got my bachelor's degree, it was the ticket to a good job, period. I had offers that were totally unrelated to my field. That's not true anymore, is it?
No.
You've got to have the work skills. Jay Scott, it's always good to see you join us.
Martin's back there.
Martin's back there. See Martin. Jay, the question we started with today was, as a result of the CTE conference this week, what's become clear to you?
Well, you know my answer to that question, because you always ask that same question. My answer to that question is nothing is clear to me except that I'm awake and I haven't had caffeine yet today. So, but I think that a couple things. There was a lot of talk around individual plans of study. We had a large session, had a really good discussion with schools on individual plans of study for every student. You know, I think in retrospect, if we would do over again, we should have, to the whole group, should have talked about the new vision and talked to people how the new vision relates with, the new vision for education relates with career and tech ed. So that's probably something we should have done at the beginning for the whole group, because that was 450 people. That was a good showing. So, so a lot of talk around individual plans of study, and then I had a session with CTE coordinators on number one, how the new student success outcomes relate to or are impacted by career and technical education, and then keys to improving career and technical education in Kansas. So we could hit those today if the group wants to, but I certainly don't want to take more time than I need to, and that people want to listen to. So,
Hey, Jay, I would like you to talk a little bit about the state board's new vision and the impact on CTE and the impact of CTE on that new vision.
okay, so the new vision, I mean, basically, you know, we came out and made a very bold statement and set a new course in Kansas that we're going to lead the world in the success of each student. And the key term there is each. It's not every student, it's each student. So to do that, we have to allow students and families to identify what is success for them after high school. And so that's the key with our new vision. And really, it's not KSDE's vision. It's not Brad or Randy's vision. This is a vision that was developed with conversations with Kansans all across the state in the spring. And so it was the largest qualitative study we've ever undertaken in Kansas, and to pull all that data that we got, that feedback from those community conversations, pulled it together and ended up with basically that. We want to lead the world in the success of each student. Well, how are we going to do that? Some of the success outcomes, well, basically the success outcomes that the state board has identified to drive that vision. One is kindergarten readiness. We need to make sure that our students, when they show, we want to lead the world in students being ready for kindergarten. And so that's really going to impact our preschool programs across the state, early childhood programs across the state. Number two, we want, the board feels like it's important that every student starting in the middle grades has and develops an individual plan of study with not only the courses, their career interests and their courses through high school, but with a post-secondary plan. And
What level were you talking about when you say middle elementary? Is that third grade? Is that fourth grade?
when I say middle grades, that's 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got some schools that start in kindergarten with career readiness, and that's great. But as far as the board wanted to, you know, they felt like it was important that you start having those career cluster conversations in the middle grades. When you start having those conversations about what a student's interested in, you know, if I was a 6th grader and they would have asked me, my answer would have been I wanted to play center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But, you know, and that's most of the kids across Kansas. Not that they want to play for the Steelers. They should, though. But most of the kids, you know, they're going to answer with something that they've seen other people doing. You know, maybe a kid had a good experience at, you know, the veterinarian clinic, you know, so they want to be a vet. Kids respond at that time with what they've seen other adults doing. And in the middle grades, it's a great time for students to start finding out what they're interested in, what their talents are aligned with, and then start inspecting and exploring other careers in the middle grades. High school graduation is another state student success outcome. We want to lead the world in the success in high school graduation. We want 100% of students to graduate. Right now we're at 86, which is high on the average spectrum across the state, across the nation, but it's certainly not acceptable to Kansas. That's what we heard. So we want to increase high school graduation. Post-secondary completion and attendance. I don't think this one can be emphasized enough. We've done several good things in our schools in Kansas, K through 12. We've increased, our proficiency numbers. We've done well on assessments, our ACT scores, all those things nationally. If you look at how we do on assessments and different aspects of high school, we do really well in Kansas. But has it changed our students' experiences when they leave high school? And the answer to that is no. We've been static for the last several years on how students perform after they leave high school. So we want to impact that. We want students to be more successful in post-secondary. And we've stopped using the word college. We have started to use the word post-secondary because we want students and families to realize there are many, many more options out there besides the four-year university. Yes, we still need students to go off to four-year university and do great things, but we need more students to go to technical colleges, community colleges, and get an associate's degree. We need more students to earn a certificate. We need more students in the military. So those are post-secondary options that lead to good middle-class jobs that can support a family. And we want our students to realize that at an earlier age, so they're not pigeonholed into the college for all conundrum, I guess. So social emotional growth measured locally is the last one. And that one was put on there as we went across the state. And this was actually more from some of the superintendents, the feedback we heard from superintendents. Couple of comments from superintendents really put this in perspective, is when they're asked the greatest challenge they have with students in their school district, and their answer was their mental health. And so the social and emotional growth of our students is very important. Now, at the state level, we don't feel it's wise to jump in and say we're going to measure these at a state level. So those social emotional growth measures still need to be in place locally. But the board did feel like that was important to add in as a student success outcome. Having said all that, if we get down the road with these 5 student success outcomes in 2 months and figure out, what, this isn't one that's really going to get us to our vision, or it doesn't need to be emphasized, then we need to be nimble enough at the state level to take it off and replace it, or just focus on the ones that are getting us to where we want to be. So if you pull those 5, if you look at which of those CTE can really have an impact on, number 1, an individual plan of study for every student, because it's based on career exploration. And, I say this all the time, our students all have one thing in common. They're all going to end up in careers. Shouldn't we as educators want to impact those decisions and lead them to those careers, whatever they are? An individual plan of study and quality career pathways in schools lead students to making a better decision about careers. The second one that career and technical education really has an impact on is high school graduation. And Martin can speak to this, but I think we did a survey on this a few years ago, but students who complete pathways in the high school level have a higher graduation rate than students who do not complete a pathway. Because those are students that find relevance in what they're learning. And they tend to be more successful. Highly engaged students tend to be more successful at the high school level. And then the last one, post-secondary completion, which the state board, and this is the real work on post-secondary completion, we need to define what that is. What is post-secondary completion for K-12? What can they say, you know what, we are leading students to do this in post-secondary? What is that success? Is that completing 12 credit hours? Is that completing a full year of post-secondary education? Is it earning a certificate? Mind you, two of those things that I just listed, a lot of our students, they complete that before they graduate. So we feel like once that post-secondary completion is clearly defined, that CTE will be positioned to lead students to achieve in that area. So that's a lot of talking. And I wish people had that list in front of them. But basically, those are the 5 student success outcomes and the 3 that CTE can really impact.
Jay, was that your handout to the new CTE coordinators meeting?
Yes.
I'm going to send that out to everybody. I've got a copy. So I'll send it to everybody that we have on our email list, so we'll get that out.
It's also, and I know people get email all the time. We have a newsletter called The Connection, and we send it out quarterly, and I sent it out, I think Monday, and it's got all of this on the second page. So if people have a copy of The Connection in front of them, they can pull that up and take a look.
That was really good, by the way, this last issue. I really enjoyed reading that, and I sent it out to make sure people got another dose of it. Some of the people I know need to hear it a little more.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You're one of the 12 people that read it.
I did. I read it every time.
You know what? That was the easiest one to put together because this is CTE month. February is CTE month. And we had schools all over the state last semester send us pictures and videos of their students in CTE. And we had, I don't know how many we had, but we had a ton of videos and pictures to choose from. And so I took some of the videos and put them on the back page of the Connection and promoted the, CTE month on the front page. So we really appreciate schools out there. There might be people listening in today that sent some stuff to us. We really appreciate that. Thank you for all you do for students.
It's pretty interesting. I went back to the school where I was principal last year, and I'm working with regional advisory committee meetings. And I went by the counselor's blackboard there. And, we have a small college in Hillsborough that, where 25 to 40% of our students go every year. But as I look at this blackboard, we have 26 of the 27 students graduating this year at Hillsborough, and they'd all been accepted to the military or to a post-secondary school already. But what I noticed this year is over half of them are going to Butler, WATC, or Flint Hills to their post-secondary. So I found that pretty interesting. It's been a work in progress there, and Hillsborough's been doing it. I think other schools are too. But I think we're getting that message out there. People are getting the message out there that the certificate and the 2-year plans of study or the 2-year schools are getting them the degrees they need to have a nice life too. So it's happening.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We're jumping in on a new grant called the New Skills for Youth grant as a state, and we can talk more about that later. But one of the key outcomes for that grant, the reason that grant is available, is to increase access to quality career pathways for all students. And one of the bits of data that they used to show the meaning behind this grant was basically the current labor market, and this is a national study. The current labor market is requiring around 35% of the jobs are requiring a bachelor's degree. And right now, we're producing about 32% of bachelor's degree holders. So we've got a small gap there with bachelors. But in the labor market right now, about 35% of the jobs require an associate's. And right now, we're producing across the nation 10%. 10% of students with an associate's degree. So we've got a huge gap, especially in those middle skilled jobs that require an associate's degree. So
we got some great opportunities out there for our kids then.
Especially in Kansas with 26 different institutions that offer associate's degrees.
Yes.
You know, that's
Let me ask you a question about that. We have 10% of our kids currently getting an associate degree, but some percentage of that 10% is working towards a bachelor's degree. It's basically the first 2 years of their bachelor's degree. When you factor that in, it's even a smaller amount that are there as a terminal degree, you know, some degree that requires 2 years that leads to work. And in my observation at Hutch Community College, just attending graduation, about half of those was Associates of Arts leading to a 4-year degree.
right. Yeah, I think a lot of students, unless it's changed since I went through, a lot of students go to junior college or community college for maybe other reasons than earning an associate's degree in a career-related field. Maybe they're getting their gen eds out of the way, so they want to transfer on to a 4-year institution, which is fine. A lot of our students, obviously, you know, athletics and activities play a role in going to community college. But I think, and we're not talking about changing the conversation with those students, and those are successful paths. But we need more students to be going to realize that a community college or an associate's degree really is a game changer and can lead to a viable career. It doesn't have to just be that 4-year bachelor's degree. That's the key to success.
Jay, I have 2 points. Number one, you lost me with Steelers.
I've always been a Steelers fan since I was born. I had an older brother that was a Dallas Cowboys fan, and he and I were about a year and a half apart, and we fought over everything. So when he declared himself to be a Cowboys fan, I automatically defaulted to their arch rival, and that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mike Webster, Hall of Fame center, was my favorite player. Don't ask me why, but he was just my favorite player.
So that just goes to show that nobody's perfect.
That's true. I knew that a long time ago.
Hey, second thing though, Max and I made an observation the other day at the CTE conference when we went in for lunch, how many administrators and counselors were there. And I don't know, this is an opinion that is unburdened by data, but it appeared as if we're getting a lot more interest that CTE has moved from the side dish to the main course for many schools.
You know, I always enjoy, we had a couple of superintendents at the new CTE coordinators meeting. We've had an influx of superintendents the last couple of years, not many, and obviously there's reasons why, but you're exactly right. Our service centers do a tremendous job with that conference, a tremendous job. You know, a lot of people think KSD actually supports that. We do support it, but we don't help with the organization, any of those things. And the work that the service centers have done together to pull that conference together is amazing. So, but yeah, I think there were 125 that Marie Hall from Greenbush said declared as a CTE coordinator that showed up for that conference. So out of 450, that's pretty good.
Oh, that's a huge number. Huge number. Hey, Martin?
Yeah.
Would you introduce yourself and then tell us what's become clear to you about CTE?
Get up here where I can see you. Hi, I'm Martin Coleman. I'm here with KSTE, and I work with the Health Pathway and then also Perkins. And kind of the big things I walked away, at least from this last conference, it's clear that people really have a lot better idea of what's available for CTE, and they're getting some of the new teachers or those who haven't been in the loop to come in this conference. Had a ton of people that first time attending got to realize the value of the networking that you have at that conference and the wealth of knowledge you can share with other teachers when you make those connections. And that was probably the biggest thing. Anything from a CTE coordinator to any teacher in any pathway, counselors and all that, it was a real good eye-opening experience, I think, for what's out there and getting some good information. We had some good talks about Perkins, the CTE coordinators, and I think just kind of how everything works, demystifying it a little bit, talking about different ways to use your funds to support people, and some of the options that you have, you know, especially if you join with a consortium and one of the learning centers, all the different benefits that you get with that out there. So I think that was probably some of the big highlights for me this week. Just it's a great chance to get to talk to other people and find out you're all in the same boat and get some assistance or ideas.
Martin, in light of the new Every Student Success Act, what are the impacts on Perkins?
Well, I think it may change a little bit on how some things may be spent depending on the district. They may look at it more from a district instead of just a kind of silo tunnel for just a specific teacher or a program. It's becoming more common that districts have more and more CTE students, so it can affect more of the district as a whole. And so we see that probably changing a little bit, maybe where some money might be spent, maybe not, or at least adding to the importance of CTE pathways and the programs and the teachers and the stuff they have. I got to go tour Manhattan High School here on Wednesday before we left, and just kind of how they've changed their own in the last couple of years as far as the importance of CTE and where they're putting some money in things. I'm seeing that same kind of, I guess, reflection across a lot of high schools that they're really investing in that. So I think we don't know with the funding on how much we'll have here in the future. Well, that's always kind of questionable, but
Even if we'll have school next year.
yeah. I mean, with what they said today, we may be all on vacation next year. So, but no, honestly, with Perkins, we're looking about the same amount as we got last year. So there won't be any big changes as far as a state, how much we receive. And as a state, we receive about $10 million, and half of it goes to post-secondary KBOR and half of it comes to KSDE. And then we roll out 85% directly to the school districts for their use. We had some big changes this year with the definition of what equipment is. And so that gives you a lot more flexibility on how long you can wait to buy it or what you can buy or what you have to worry about. Anything that's over 5,000 per unit is equipment. Anything under is a supply. So that gives a lot more flexibility to schools, and I think makes it easier for them to buy things. That was kind of one thing. But, you know, really, I see a lot of funds going to professional development here recently. That seems to be more of a trend. We're still buying equipment, buying what we need, but really making sure the teachers have those gaps filled, have the knowledge, they're comfortable with what they're teaching. And I think that makes a better opportunity for the students.
I agree with that, Martin. I believe that's been a big piece. When I was acting principal, I thought the Perkins funds that we got, I always use those to send teachers to trainings because that's one of the first places we cut in our general budget was our PD stuff. So always felt like that was something I needed to do. And then as you get this Perkins money, which is, you know, per student enrolled in per hour or per pathway, we use that to help buy equipment. So it worked out pretty good. I know those as we went to the block grant, some of those are being shifted around now a little bit. So yeah, I was just wondering, Martin, is you say the state of Kansas is going to get about the same amount. So is that where the direction is going at the national level? Perkins is going to be about the same amount of funding as it has.
Yeah, they've kind of got it locked down. Kind of a stagnant, I guess, funding stream right now. I haven't seen a lot of increase or anything. We can't go any lower than we're already at, so I know it won't get worse, at least unless they, you know, come up with some way to challenge that. But we're always looking for opportunities for more. And I think until they get the Perkins 5 authorized and rolled out, we're not going to see any real big changes for a while. So as far as school districts and you know, consortium and all that, your application for next year will be very, very similar to what it was last year. More or less, I'll go in and change the dates. We'll be getting that out for FY17. We're going to try and work with our ID department to get all the core indicator information out for all the districts and send those out to the consortia. So that way they've got that data. If they haven't already downloaded it, it'll be easier for them to do that way. And then in March, we're looking at doing our guesstimate at the allocation. We can't give an official hard number, what you'll get, until usually around May when the feds release and send a letter to us that this is what you're going to be awarded. That goes to K-Board, and they share it with us, and then we can finalize the allocation numbers. But we should be pretty close. We basically look at census data from a couple years ago. 30% of your funds are based on your census population of a school district, and then 70% is based on your need, your low SES, your free and reduced lunch. So if you have big changes in that a couple of years ago, it's going to affect you this year. But then it also depends on what the rest of the state's done as far as if they've had big swings. And we had that a couple of years ago. We saw a lot of students get out of free and reduced lunch, and then those that stayed about the same level or gained a little bit, the funds shifted quite a bit to those areas. Everybody saw some big changes. So hopefully that it's a little more even keel.
Right. Martin, question for you. You know, we got the changes for 16-17 handed out. Is there anything that you can think of that we specifically need to make sure districts are looking at, or is it pretty general? I mean, the changes are all listed according to course codes and changes. And anything else that we might want to really take a look at?
I know marketing's got a kind of a big change as a requirement. That's one that a lot of people have to be aware of. We've started into really the season, I guess, for the pathway submissions, the applications. If school districts haven't done that already or started on it, it's a good time to do it. And watch your KCCMS for your submission of courses. We have a lot of people doing EDCS. STCO is pretty much wrapped up, but they're finding out they don't have the right courses in. We can help you with that this year. If you've got the wrong one in your pathway, we can actually go in and change it for this current year and help alleviate some of those problems. If you call the Pathways Help Desk, we'll be happy to work with you. I came up with kind of a cheat sheet on making sure your pathways approved the first time, because I only want to see them once. I don't want to have to send them back.
Did you give that out? Did you give that out to anybody?
Well, I sent it out on my health science listserv, and I kind of vetted it with Angie, and she gave me some suggestions. So we might send it out, but it's pretty common stuff. The first thing is, if you aren't changing anything, click the no change button.
Awesome.
And save it and move on. Big one that we always have section 2 is make sure you got 3 business industry reps, and one of those are your chair or your positions. A teacher cannot be the chair. So that's about the only thing you can possibly accidentally click wrong there. 2, the same thing with the no change. If you are a maintenance pathway, meaning you've been in existence more than 1 year, and you put your 3 years in, you don't have to change them. You can let it roll for 2 more years. So save you a little time there. If you want to put updates or you have things you want to put in there to show that it's a advisement from your,
Sorry.
Go ahead. Hang on. We've had a bit of a surprise here for Cleland.
Got somebody here that wants to talk to you.
all right. Basically, you can let those roll, but if you want to make adjustments and changes, you're always welcome to. I always say look at your improvement plan as a way to show that your advisory committee is giving you support to buy something, change something, get some PD. So if you want to put that in there and document it, it's a good place to do it. Section 3, unless you're changing courses, you're going to hit a no change on this one. If you go through and add courses, you're going to make sure they're in KCCMS and have the right ones clicked. That, if you do, will affect section 4 because your program of study needs to have those added. So that's a one to check. The number one thing that we get a send back on for a decline is articulation agreements.
Yep.
If you have last year's articulation agreement and it specifies it's for the 14-15 school year, it's going to go back to you. If you want to use a statewide, it rolls. And so you just make sure you've got the current statewide in there, and that'll take care of that. The other thing I've seen a lot of post-secondary working with their school districts is they'll set like a date range, or they'll say this agreement is current, active, valid, whatever you want to use, until otherwise notified, or until 2020, or whatever they want to do. So if you want to extend that range besides every year, as long as we've got it signed by both parties, then that's the way it is. That's fine. So that might save you a little bit of time in the future too.
Yeah, and Martin, on those articulation agreements, how do we get that to some of these schools where they, instead of writing this for 1 year, they write it for 3 years from now on? Is there, or is that up to them to decide how much they'll actually do?
If you don't want to use a statewide and you want to have a one-to-one, basically just put it right there that this articulation agreement is good from 2015, 16, whatever year you sign it until whatever it has, or for the school years of this, and this, and however far you want to go. Or I've even seen it until otherwise notified by whoever it happens to be. So.
I got another question for you on that, because obviously I don't have to worry about this so much this year. Can we have more than one articulation agreement on a
Oh yeah, you
okay.
can have all you want.
What you could do is what I'm thinking here. You could put like the school that we had to do a lot with, or we did a lot with, was Butler.
Yep.
We could add a state behind it, so we had 2 in there, so we were always covered.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's right. Now, what we'll do is we'll approve it, and then we'll make a note if one's expired.
Okay.
We'll just make a note in there. But if they're both active, then you've got both of them. You could have 10 of them in there for all we care. The only trick to that is then you have to have a program of study for every articulation.
There you go.
Because of
Now you are making it tougher.
Yeah, we've always had that 13th year, that 1 year plus of post-secondary in the program of study. And that's probably the other thing. Make sure those are shared with your counselors. I don't know how many counselors I've talked to that said, I didn't even know we had these.
That should be your number one teammate.
Yeah. So
important. Good. So in other words, if we're putting, if we're not changing anything, it's just no change.
Exactly, and I get to hit that approve button and you're done.
You are a happy man then, aren't you?
I am. Because last year we had over 2,700 pathway applications.
That's good.
And about half of those or more, I had to see more than twice.
Oh boy.
So
that's a bad problem. I can't
bad problem.
find more than enough.
Hey, Angela, Jana, jump in here. Your questions, your comments.
I have several questions, if you don't mind. So I've been taking notes about this business, and so I wanted to ask about the talk around the individual plans of study for every student.
Sure.
One of our teachers deals a lot with CTE and has for many, many years. And she's from Ohio. And she said one of the things that they have done in Ohio is something along this same line where they have the individual plans of study. And she said what they discovered in Ohio is what kind of a problem it has been for them, because I think by law they put it in, every student had to have an IPS more or less. And have we talked to any of the states that have done this, that have already implemented individual plans of study? And do we know how things have gone with them and what we don't want to do so that we don't make the same mistakes, or, that kind of thing? Do we know anything about that?
I mean, the ones I've seen, the biggest challenge is to make sure that your school staff, teachers, and counselors are all informed with the same knowledge. And the training is probably the key element to getting away from a lot of the problems, because Kansas isn't really that strict. We've got 3 basic components that you have to have: the career interest, the program of study, and then the connection to the post-secondary. And so that's really not that hard a deal, I don't think, to implement for all your students, at least coming in from your middle school than that. But you can make it so much more robust. And if people aren't trained on that robustness, whether it's a software or a process or a policy, you can run into some challenges that way. But I'm going to let Jay talk a little bit.
Yeah, it's a really good question. We have talked to other states, and generally, I like to think that Kansas is ahead on many things. But if you ask me if you look at what other states have been doing, Missouri has had an individual plan of study for every student as a requirement for 10 years. Many other states have had this in place for many years now. we don't know what other states require as far as the components of an individual plan of study. I think that's what we're really talking about. And we feel good about that because we convened a group of principals and counselors and asked them what should be the required components of an individual plan of study. And we have a list of 20 different components of a quality program of study. So that's right now what we're doing, Angela. What we're trying to do is we're sending out a request for proposal this month. And in that request for proposal, we have listed, these are for vendors that have individual plans of study software systems, right? Like Career Cruising, Naviance, the Kansas Career Pipeline. There's a host of other individual plan of study software systems out there. So what we're doing as a state is we're putting together an RFP. We'll send it out in February. What it says is if you are a vendor of individual plans of study and you have these, you can meet these components for our schools, all 20 components, and you meet this price point per student. So we're naming the price point in this state, in this RFP. If they can meet those things, they can be put on what we're calling a state preferred vendor list. We want to have that out in May, and then schools can look at that list and decide, okay, we want to use let's say Career Cruising is on there, and we want to use Career Cruising. We're not using anything now. The state is going to pay startup costs, right, for the schools to jump on any state preferred vendor. And then the school would pay subscription costs, the cost that we named in the RFP, the per student cost. So we know it's an issue trying to build a statewide system. We're really not going with one vendor. We're just saying these are the state preferred vendors. And so that we think that'll really help schools in identifying the best fit for them as far as an individual plan of study system.
Okay, so let me ask you a question about that, because when you're talking about, you know, like I say, I've had a little experience between Career Cruising and with the Navigator Career Pipeline stuff. And
Yeah.
so where our student information system does not play nice with Career Cruising, if Career Cruising is the one that says, oh yeah, we're gonna, you know, we've met the criteria and everything will be great, but Career Pipeline cannot do it, this still deals with it. There's still a lot of problems between exporting the stuff out of our student information system and putting it into Career Cruising, because Career Cruising will tell you, oh, we work really great with all these vendors, and then lo and behold, when you get the thing together, no, it doesn't work quite the way they thought. You know, because I'm spending like 40 hours a week just getting, or 40 hours altogether just getting our initial, and we've only got 300 students in K through 12 here. So, you know, that's a lot of things I'm touching individually. So it's just a lot of stuff. I'm just curious about that.
That was the number one component. That was the first one listed, is if you're going to be a state preferred vendor, you need to have the capability to talk talk seamlessly between the individual plan of study program or system and your student information system. So I don't know, talking with our IT department, we have 13 different student information systems in Kansas right now. So to ask a vendor like Career Cruising to say, well, you have to be able to talk to every one of them, that may be a stretch. Now, I think, now, having said all this, as a school district, you don't have to select one of the state preferred vendors. You can grow your own. I know some schools that are creating what I've seen really good individual plans of study for their students through Google. And schools are free to do that. You know, it's at the bottom, at the end of the day, we just want every student to have an individual plan of study, starting in the middle grades. We just think that we want to help schools that aren't doing anything now with the state preferred vendor list. So I don't know if that would solve it. You know, I feel like Career Cruising would be a competitive vendor to make it on our preferred vendor list. But what's your student information system?
We use GoEDU, and I know that it works beautifully with Skyward, but we don't use Skyward, and I don't know how it works with Power School, but we use GoEDU. And I know GoEDU has had some issues with that, but and I don't know what it would take to switch, even if we wanted to. I'm thinking that would be another nightmare that I'm not really personally willing to deal with.
That's right.
I'm just going to stay where we're.
I hear you.
No,
No, we
I-
see that from our end that there's always a little hiccup, and I'm trying to remember who did something to us the other day. We just basically flat out told the vendor, no, you got to fix it. That's not anything we're going to deal with. So if you get a statewide and we've got that consistency though, that we've only got a couple of vendors, they're going to be more likely to work with your student information systems than if we've got 13. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. So okay, so that answers your question. Now I'd like to ask two more questions if you don't mind, and hopefully they're quicker than that. One of the things that was stated was every student has and develops an individual plan of study with their courses, their career interests, and post-secondary plans starting in grades 6, 7, and 8. And while I understand it's really great to do a lot of this exploration of possible careers, there's I think a fairly large percentage of careers today that were not even invented whenever I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Right.
How do we plan to address that, or do we have any formal plan?
Well, if Kent was saying this, it's regular interaction with your students and something you update on at least an annual basis,
Okay.
if not more. And, you want to be a center for the Pittsburgh, you can do that. Next
Should
week,
do that.
Next week, you want to be in sanitation. The week after that, you want to be a firefighter. Then you want to be a chef. And your friend says, oh, I want to be a vet because kittens are cute. Well, you can do that, That's part of the benefit of this plan, whether you use something locally, you do it in a Google Doc, or you use one of the third-party vendors, is you have the access to change that and make adjustments. And so that's that exploration and trying at the high school level with the low cost versus changing majors every year at wherever you happen to be.
Angie, one more thing on that. We're not expecting 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to select a specific occupation. That's not what this is about. This is about whittling it down to maybe 3 or 4 clusters, career clusters that they're interested in. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade time is time to find the students to find out what their interests are, what their strengths are, and align those with career clusters, not specific career occupations. So if a student, we think it's successful, we've heard from schools, it's success if the student, when they matriculate to 9th grade, that they've identified 3 or 4 career clusters that they'd like to pursue maybe and study a little bit deeper. So you're not naming exactly what you want to do or even 3 or 4 things that you want to do. It's more you're whittling it down to 3 or 4 clusters before you move on.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
One other thing I would throw out is it's a good chance for your high school, either students or teachers, to come talk to your middle school about the pathways that are available at the high school. And that way they've kind of got some idea and get some of that involvement that way. And then we had a teacher from Salina talk about how they send their junior, senior health science teachers down to the kindergarten level, and they do a health fair. And they talk to all the kindergartners about different aspects of health. And that's just that exploration, awareness, it's not hardcore, at that level. So.
Okay, well that answers that question, because I thought I would just check, because I'm thinking, oh my land, are we identifying now 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? And then you do the pathway. So a little scary thought there.
Not nailed down. Yeah, it's just.
Okay, thank goodness. All right, so then my last question that I had as things are going on, our high school graduation, we want to move to 100% of students graduating. We're currently at 86%. I noticed in the legislation this year that there is something in the works about legal age to quit school being changed to 18. Is that partly to address this? And I noticed that there was another little codicil or something put in.
I think that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a separate issue. Okay.
Right.
I didn't know if they were part of each other, or if they were just one thing, or if they were meant to address one way or another.
Personally, I'd like to see every kid go all the way through so they have more opportunities to take more CTE classes.
Yeah. Yeah. exactly. But, yeah, I just wondered because, as I say, I was looking at all those bills and I thought, well, I wonder what that one's about. So, and I just wondered if this was part of it.
Yeah. No.
Okay, that's all. That was all my questions as I was taking notes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions.
Hey, Jana, are you our resident individual plan of study person?
Well, that could be. I don't know.
Yes, the answer is yes.
I did talk about what Halstead's doing, along with Jay and Kathleen at the conference. We start at the 6th and 7th grade level with career exploration. Their 8th grade level, they meet with a counselor once a month to identify different interests, do interest surveys and work skill surveys. They come out of there, have finished a college visit and a job shadow before they come into the high school realm. We'd like for them to have identified 3 to 4 clusters by the time they get to the high school. And then we take those clusters and work with them between their 8th grade and 9th grade year as far as creating a program of study that's a very fluid document. We use a summary document that records 7th grade through 13, 14. Each year as a 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, they record what their interest is and how it may have changed over the years. So that's kind of a synopsis there on what we're doing with individual plans of study right now. We're in, let's see, 3rd year at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade level, and 1st year then moving it into the summary document at the high school level.
Jana, what are the lessons you've learned from that experience?
It takes a lot of time. It's probably one of the biggest one I've learned. The other thing is kids are more likely to get excited about classes if they see they could do this. The understanding that they have to have the introduction classes. You know, sometimes it's, oh, I have to take the intro class. Yeah, you know, we kind of put that in that 8th grade freshman year and give them several of them so they can choose something and not just one pathway all the way through. Kids come in and change them after they've been in a class and say, yeah, I didn't think that's what that was. I don't like that idea anymore. And that's okay. We'd rather them do that then than when they're paying tuition for it. We have definitely increased the number of students enrolled in college classes in our junior and senior level. We've working towards the certifications. That's probably been a difficult issue for us in small high school to make sure we could get them to where they could get certifications.
Jana, do you have any questions for Jay or Martin? Any clarifications you need?
No, I pretty well visited with them at CTE.
Jay and Martin, I'm gonna throw this out at you quick, and I know this is the most current. It's probably not updated on the website yet. The changes were handed out at the CTE conference for the 16-17 school year. I sent those out this morning. I scanned them and I sent them out this morning to our districts. And I'm getting several emails back. Well, that's not what it says on the website. So
Right.
I'm going to
I went out
assume
and
that
looked last night and
I'm
it's
going to
not
assume
there.
that what I did scan from the conference and did send out is the correct changes.
Well, I tell them always to look at the date. Make sure you're looking at 16-17, not 15-16.
Okay, that's what I thought too, but I just wanted to let you know that I've had several emails back already.
I do need to let you know that Cleela left us for a little bit because she had a singing Valentine.
I experienced, Jay and Martin, I experienced the performing arts pathway in action. And they don't have one yet, but they ought to.
So we knew that was coming, but Cleela didn't.
Now I know why you said let's go do Hollywood. You have an alternative. You had something in the works.
This is Katie, and I do have a question.
Yeah.
For Jay and Martin, you mentioned the outcomes from the state board about kindergarten readiness and early childhood education and things like that. Are there any funds that will be available coming down from the state to help push that? I mean, we're at Stafford, a small school district, and right now, through our co-op, we're having a hard time with funding for our early childhood development. So any insight or advice or light up the tunnel for that?
Really good question, Katie. One that we're not prepared. We don't have the knowledge to answer. We have an early childhood, department here at the agency, and so they may have more information that could help you with that. I do know that that the initial talk around that one was a standardized kindergarten readiness assessment for the state, so that, whittle it down to basically the first week that students are kindergartners, along with trying to sell them on that it's a good idea that they go to school all day, is that they would take a standardized assessment to determine their readiness. So that's, if you're looking at what the state is planning on doing for this kindergarten readiness outcome, I think the biggest thing is creating a statewide kindergarten readiness assessment, and then that would then impact preschools and early childhood programs, because they can align their instruction, their standards with that assessment.
Okay.
As far as the funding goes, I really don't know if something's coming out of the legislature, or if there's some federal funds for early childhood that the department has access to, that they're planning on awarding to schools.
Okay. Thank you.
Contact on that, but you bet.
Katie, any other questions?
Not that I can think of. I kind of picked everybody's brain. I had questions about while we were at CTE conference, but that was one that kind of flashed back when you mentioned it. So,
Joni, what's going on with you today? Oh, there you go.
There we are. Actually, I'm at Copper Mountain in Colorado, so I'm doing
Oh, man.
So, Tony, it struck me after I talked to you this morning that when I called you this morning, it was 6:30 where you're at.
Yeah. We were getting an early start, so my sister from Arizona is here, and my daughter and I are here, and I'll do some snowshoeing this afternoon, but I thought I'd jump in on your webinar here this morning. I wasn't able to attend the CTE conference because it was our parent-teacher conference dates. So we never can leave when we have parent-teacher conferences. So I was glad for the summary reports of that, and it sounds like some neat and interesting things are taking place. And I was glad to hear that the counselor population had increased at those sessions, because we didn't always have a strong counselor group there. So that was nice to hear. So, but no questions.
Any questions, Joni, that you have, or comments, other comments?
Now, I'm really pleased with the whole movement and trend and vision. I guess one thing that I noted here that would be of further interest for me is working more with the professional learning experiences, the job shadows. I think that's a whole new area for a lot of people, especially counselors, setting those up. Working with your economic development people, finding out where your labor trends are in your communities. I think that's a whole nother branch that we might need to look at to pull the whole picture back together and keep our students in our communities. But I just don't know that our economic people are on board with us, or that we haven't invited them in. So I would like to look at that a little bit more and see what that, how that moves with us throughout the vision, is creating the whole big picture.
Hey, Joni, I do have a question for you. and Jana kind of led me to this, that if we're going to really help kids explore their talents and what they're interested in, it can't just be counselors. How are we going to involve other people in accepting responsibility for some of that?
That's always a challenge, and I know at Colby we have involved the other staff. Our English Language Arts department plays a huge role in rolling out all of our career plans, helping with the resumes and the personal narrative essays, the many components of that. In fact, we just finished up yesterday. I was in the 8th grade classes through the career and life planning class, doing their 4-year plans, enrollment. We've done all of our freshmen, and we work through our PE health department with that one. Sophomores and juniors, we work through our language arts department. So they play a major role with carrying out many of the tasks so that I don't have to do every session, every student, but they're taking ownership. So we've taken the whole process and kind of divided it out developmentally of what classes and then how does it fit into the curriculum. With the language arts, many of the career and technical stuff addresses their core curriculum. So the personal narrative essay, the research paper, the public speaking, the writing, all of those are outcomes in the language arts. So for us, that was a perfect match. But I think it's going to take everybody to help with this and have an understanding, and that will take some additional guidance and instruction on our part to how to do that.
Hey, Joni, when you do the public speaking part of that in your language arts, can you attach a video of what the students did to that individual plan of study? Because you might start that in career and life planning, but then you come back as a sophomore and then you come back as a senior, do it again. It might be interesting to see the growth, how that looks in 8th grade as compared to 10th grade and in 12th grade.
I think the students love to always see their growth, and that would be an excellent opportunity to do that, especially if they were creating their own pages or something of that nature. We haven't done that, but it would be excellent to look at that growth process. It's kind of like their own scrapbook. They like to go back and look at those things again.
And are you using a program now over there, or are you using something that you made up? I do believe Career Cruising has the ability to attach video to it. I don't know that, but I remember our earlier webinar with him. I think it was in October or November. He talked about that we could attach video to it. So that'd be interesting to see and keep. And Janet, yes.
Yeah. We haven't used, we're not a career cruising school at this time. We're still Kansas Career Pipeline. We are looking into it to see what it would cost us and what the implications would be for our district our size. But we have not, and the students have not done anything. We're kind of using Google Classroom right now and Google Docs for our individual plan of study. So this is the first year we've gone that route. And right now it's working pretty well. So we'll see how that works out as we continue to have students update. And I have access to them. So when I have an IEP meeting, I can just pull up their individual plan of study that the student has, and I can go right into that annual IEP with their individual plan of study. Parents have access to it. So it's our most cost-effective way right now for us to share it.
I would like to see that. Just see what you're doing with that Google Docs and that Google documentation.
Well, we just took our individual plan of study and put it out there, and then I walked them. We spent 2 days in some of the classes walking through the whole process of their interest inventories, and then moving to their individual plan of study, updating that, and then obviously the final step for us is pre-enrollment, so we can begin the enrollment process, knowing what classes. And then, of course, as a pipeline school, we can still see where our high interest areas are, which helps us with curriculum and program planning.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Joni.
You're welcome.
Diana, questions or comments? We know we can never get Diana to turn her camera on, as she may have stepped away. Hey, Jay, on the success indicators, the social emotional, I would highly recommend that everybody take a look at the Gallup student poll. It's free, so the price is really good. It has been created over the last many years. They've done over 3 million interviews and surveys. And if you go to gallupstudentpoll.com, they only give that. There's a window in the fall when you give it. I think you can purchase it and take it at other times during the year. It measures hope, engagement, and well-being. And I will give Max a link to send out with this stuff. There is a video that we have from our national convention, and one of the keynote speakers was from Gallup, and it's a fascinating presentation. So Max, I'll give you that link to send out with the notes. It is really worth watching. I don't know, Joni, did you get a chance yet to watch it?
There it is. It talks about this.
No, I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but I will.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I got a chance to see that video, Steve. Thanks for sending that out. You know, Dr. Watson watched that, and he sent that out to several people, and man, that was just a fantastic presentation on, just as you said, just engagement and hope and all those things for our students. And it really, you know, the speaker's comments, I can't remember his name, but he really focused on career education as really building up that relevance factor and that engagement level for students. So yeah, I agree. That was a tremendous presentation.
Yeah, he does a great job, and they have solid data to support that. The window next year is October 3rd to November 4th. So, you know, you can start being prepared for that now and then have that window. It's not a long survey, but there's some really interesting stuff. And that really is that part of that social emotional, what a great place to start for free.
Is this at different levels? I mean, is it at a sixth or a sixth, seventh, eighth, and then a?
As far as I know, it's the same survey, but we even have in SDAC land, we have elementary schools that have used it, that have focused on it. And don't be shocked if some of your data is a little bit shocking to you the first time you do it. Because we have a whole lot of our kids that don't have much hope, engagement, or sense of well-being out there. So,
This Kim Baldwin just came on.
Kim, how are you today? Glad you could join us. Or not. Any other questions, comments? Kalila, Max? Anything that we need to cover that we haven't?
Not at this point.
Well, we've got, I mean, your GIS grant is due today by 5 o'clock if you haven't submitted that yet.
Well, and if it's anywhere nearly as successful as the Vex Robotics grant was, you want to get all over that, because what a success that was. Jay, any final comments before we sign off?
I just appreciate Joni jumping in from Copper Mountain. And the only thing I'd ask is, where's her GoPro? She could be, you know, snowshoeing like she wants to be and meeting with us at the same time.
That's true.
So that, you know.
Now that, Joni, that would be impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a bit scary.
You know, for me personally, I'd rather be on a golf course with palm trees, but, you know, to each his own.
And alligators.
And alligators. If you haven't seen my alligator pictures, they're quite impressive. Cam, you joined us again.
Yeah, sorry. I've been bouncing back and forth. I just got out of some classes, so I'm sure I'll get caught up on the replay.
Kim, we'll send the video out of this so that you can watch anything you missed, but any comments, questions, observations from CTE that you'd like to make? Jay and Martin are with us, so we can answer questions. They can answer questions. We can't.
For me, I guess I just needed clarification in the health sciences pathway. We do not offer a CNA course, but it's taught here kind of in our community. We offer some of the other classes though through like our biochem pathway. So just making sure we can have students, take those 3 levels of courses, and then if they complete their CNA test, we would be able to identify them as completers. Is that correct?
The CNA doesn't have anything to do with being a completer or a concentrator. It's just an option of the class at that application level. The thing you look at is if they get their CNA and graduate, then you get the Senate Bill 155 certification funding that comes to you as their home school.
Okay. Thank you.
It doesn't have to be a class that's taught at your school either. So.
Okay. Great.
Kim, any thoughts about the CTE conference? Anything that jumped out at you?
It was really informative for me. I carry multiple roles, and I'm still learning as I go with CTE and doing all of the coordinating and paperwork and re-apping. There were some really awesome workshops that I went to either intentionally or unintentionally. There was a really awesome forensic science one. I was actually headed to a separate workshop, and then I saw the blood on the door with the caution tape, and I just was drawn into that. In taking a look at how Goddard utilizes forensic crime scene as an actual class is cool. And then trying to figure out how we can incorporate some forensic science lessons even, or a unit within the classes that we offer on the science side of things. It's just a lot of the workshops that I sat in on are forcing me to have some conversations, or are helping encourage some conversations with different staff members and administration within our building and within our district. So it was a great time. Hopefully I get to go next year as well and make some additional connections and see what else we can do to help out our kids here in our district.
Kim, I want to commend you guys at Inman. Kevin Case presented to our superintendents 2 weeks ago, and they have gone back 5 years and tracked every graduate. And they had some really eye-opening data emerge from that. They're doing a great job with the kids that they're preparing and going to 4-year universities. Great success there. They found some other areas that were just under the radar that they really see they've got some work to do. And I think that's exactly the intent of the board's vision, is to say, okay, how are we doing with all kids, not just the ones going to universities? Anything else?
I don't think so.
I think we're done.
Well, thank you, everyone. We'll send the video out with several attachments to that. And thanks again. And if we don't talk to you between now and next month, we'll see you on the webinar next month. Thanks. Have a great day, people.